Let's have a discussion about parents who don't acknowledge or undermine their child's disability. Hi, my name is Dr. Natalie Jones. I'm a licensed therapist. I've been counseling women and men for many years who have experienced abuse, as well as those who've been perpetrators of abuse and other violent crimes. One of the things that I wanted to come on here and talk to you all about is, those parents who have children with disabilities, and either they don't acknowledge their child with disabilities, they don't like their child with disabilities, or they completely disregard their child's disability altogether. And what this looks like is, we're seeing a lot of parents who have children with autism and other disabilities and things of that nature, that are being very vocal about that on the internet. But what happens when you have a parent that doesn't acknowledge their child's disability? So sometimes what tends to happen is a parent can feel ashamed or embarrassed of their child with disabilities, and they may not come right out and say that, but they may show it in their actions where they will ignore that child. They will pay attention to the other children in the home if there are multiple children, or they will be downright mean to the child. I think this a good example of this was on Little Women Atlanta, older episodes where the girl, I think her name was Emily, I'm sorry, was talking to her baby's father about having a child with their genetic disorder, which results in a little person. And the father was very nonchalant. He was basically saying, I don't want a child, and, I'm not going to be happy about having a child with a disability, and so on and so forth. And he was very, very cold about it when she was having a conversation with him about her concerns, about having a little child. And so this is a good example of that. If you've ever seen, I've seen clips of it. I haven't watched the show, but I've seen clips of it online, on TikTok, actually. So you could probably, watch a TikTok of it. But essentially, you have parents that may, get up and walk away. They may express that they don't want to have a child with disabilities prior to even having the child, and be very adamant that they don't want to be a part of that child's life if the mother decides to go ahead and have a child with disabilities. So it could be, contentious before the child even gets here, like very much what we saw on that show. And then, once the child gets here, it's just, blatantly ignoring the child, humiliating the child, not engaging with the child, or, just essentially abandoning the child for long periods of time, or even abandoning the child and the mother saying that they don't want that responsibility. It's expensive to have a child with disabilities, so they don't want to have that expense. And so there could be all sorts of arguments and things like that they come up with, as far as the child. It could be a source of humiliation as well when, the child can be mocked. That parent mocks that child for their disability in front of other people, saying that it's not really a disability, so denial of a disability, or saying that they caught the disability by, doing something that they weren't supposed to do. So blaming the child for the disability and putting it back on them, and saying that they got it in this like super far out way. As opposed to acknowledging that it may be like a genetic disorder or something to that effect. So there can be a denial of that. You can also go so far as to be cruel and say, well, that child is not mine. A child that came from me would never have this sort of disorder, or I would never produce a child like that. And so they could deny the paternity of a child altogether. And, just kind of, just be outwardly cruel. But, also other things that they could do is, go to special places and events with their other children and cut the disabled child out of it. If the disabled child is a boy or a girl, the child may long to have a connection with their father in doing manly things or just having, that one-on-one bonding time, and that parent would refuse to do that. There's also been an uptick in, from what I've seen, of abandoning disabled children. So again, I've seen some things where, parents will leave their child or dump their children who are disabled, and, dumping in terms of leaving them in their apartments after they move out. Parents can get super frustrated also too with their child with disabilities. They could be frustrated at, maybe managing the care, or the child not understanding, or the child having behavioral or cognitive issues. And as a result of that parent's frustration, the parents' dislike for the predicament that they find themselves in, they could physically lash out and become enraged or physically abusive towards the child. Yelling, calling the child names could be other abusive patterns that they demonstrate towards their children. Being rough with, hygiene or maintenance care, throwing things, forcing the child to eat food, coming up with creative or malicious forms of punishment, particularly if the child is bedridden or sedentary. So I've interviewed, a lot of people over the years, unfortunately, especially with disabled children, especially, with those who are, it could be really devastating with those who are nonverbal, or those who have significant developmental delays or cognitive impairment, and, those are children that are highly susceptible to being assaulted, physically, sexually, emotionally neglected, or abused or verbally abused. And, so it could be particularly challenging to get information out of them. There is, for a lot of the adult child victims that I've interviewed, a lot of them have a sense of connection and a sense to want to connect, a desire to want to belong, is what I'm trying to say. And so, they want to have friends. They want to blend in. They want to try to have a connection as much as possible, and they don't know how. So they can certainly internalize their disability and feel a lot more shame because of it. They may be unable to outwardly express that in the language that I'm talking to you in, but the feelings can still be there. And they could still feel the animosity, the hatred, and the abuse from the other parent, or from their parents. So I hope that helps. Thanks so much.